And as a result, I have an amendment, Madam President. It is LCO number 10430. I ask that the clerk call this amendment, and I be allowed to summarize it for the chamber.
Thank you, Senator Sampson. Mr. Clerk, kindly call the amendment.
LCO number 10430, Senate Schedule B.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to speak for a couple of minutes, and I promise I will remember to move adoption at the end, and I hope you'll remind me if I forget. The amendment that is before us is not to replace the bill. Like I began this conversation about how we keep doing what's called strike all amendments. I'm not attempting to strike the bill that's before us. In fact, I intend fully on supporting the bill that is before us, but I would like very much to add this language to that. I think that these are items that every person in this chamber should agree with. And I'm pleading with my colleagues, particularly my Democratic colleagues, who are often inclined not to change legislation when it is here for fear it may slow it down. I think that adding this language will, in fact, improve the chances that this underlying bill becomes law. This is a Senate bill, so we have it first. It has not gone to the House yet, and we know what happens when bills go to either chamber with no votes. I would like to send this to the House unanimously, and I believe we can get there if we adopt this amendment. And this amendment should be an easy yes vote for any person in this chamber, since it simply condemns racism and discrimination in the way children are educated in this state. And I will just briefly describe what the amendment does. It's kind of short. I'm almost tempted to read it, but I understand that's probably not allowed. It says, after the last section, we are going to add this policy, which reads, no curriculum developed and adopted in the State Board of Education, Department of Education, or any local or regional Board of Education, or taught in any school in this state after the effective date of this section shall include the teaching of divisive concepts to students in grades K through 12. And the following section B lists what are considered divisive concepts. And I would urge my colleagues to look at them. And I doubt that anyone would say that any of these things should be taught in our schools. Number one, that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. If you agree with that, you can vote yes to this amendment. That is a divisive concept, rather, that we should not be teaching that one race or sex is inherently superior to another. Two, another divisive concept. We should not be teaching that the state of Connecticut or the United States of America is fundamentally racist or sexist. We should not have policies that say an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. We should not say an individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of the individual's race or sex. I hope people listening, regardless of party, are agreeing with me that these are good policies to prevent being taught in our schools. We should not allow it to be taught that an individual's moral character is necessarily determined by the individual's race or sex, or that an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex, or that any individual should feel discomfort, guilt, or anguish, or other form of psychological distress on account of the individual's race or sex. I could go on. There's a few more of these things, but and I'm happy to discuss them if any of the members want to have a conversation. But I assure anyone listening, there's nothing out of the ordinary in the rest of them. It's just simply to prevent race or sex stereotyping and so on. I firmly believe that we have got to get a hold of our education system in this state and this country and remind the next generation that America is the greatest place on earth because people should be treated equal under the law. The past is not perfect. There are problems in the past, and I don't mind if those things are necessarily taught. But what we're trying to do is trying to convince future generations to look at each other as human beings and judge them on their own character and merit, and not based on their race and gender. I move adoption of the amendment, Madam President, and I encourage my colleagues to adopt this amendment, make it part of the policy of this state of Connecticut going forward, help this bill get out of this chamber, and set us on a direction towards ending racism and discrimination once and for all. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. Will you remark further on the bill before the chamber? Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, first I would ask that when the vote is taken on this amendment, it be taken by roll.
And there's been a request for roll call vote, so we will do that once the amendment has been fully discussed.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I have a few questions for the proponent of the amendment.
Please proceed, Senator Sampson. Prepare yourself.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, similar to the conversation we had on the underlying bill with regard to examples, I was wondering if the good senator could give me an example of where these divisive concepts are currently being taught in our K through 12 classrooms.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. It's been happening all across the country, Madam President, and I understand completely that the question is about a policy in this state. And I can provide specifics, although I didn't print any or have them with me, because I believe these concepts are so simple that we should simply just agree with them, with or without examples. But, Madam President, there are numerous situations that have been brought to my attention as a member of this body by constituents of people being treated unfairly based on their race and gender, and also being explained to that the history of this country is in fact racist, and that it is not worthy of merit. I was completely saddened last Independence Day when parents brought to my attention that students were being taught that Independence Day was an unhealthy thing because, in fact, the founders of this great nation were nothing but racist white men. And I don't think that is a complete discussion of the value of the founding fathers of this country, and would fall into the category of a divisive concept that I do not believe should be taught in school. I hope that's satisfactory through you, Madam President.
Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Madam President. And Madam President, following up on that response, so would it be a divisive concept for a teacher to point out that many of the founding fathers of this country owned slaves?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. Absolutely not. I believe that that is history, it is the truth, and they should be able to teach it. Nothing in the concepts listed has anything to do with that. The closest example would be the divisive concept that I mentioned that says the state of Connecticut or the United States of America is fundamentally racist or sexist, which I believe is an entirely separate idea than suggesting that the founding fathers might have been guilty of crimes against humanity, slavery, and so on, which I believe should be taught. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Madam President. And Madam President, again, following up on that particular response, does the good senator have an example of somewhere in our K through 12 ecosystem, if you will, that says that the state of Connecticut or the United States of America is fundamentally racist or sexist?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I did not bring anything with me today, but there are many, many examples that that is occurring all across our nation and in the state of Connecticut. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Flexer.
Through you, Madam President, I at the risk of being, well, I really would like to have an example to fully evaluate this amendment that is before us. But if there isn't one, I guess I'll just move on. Madam President, would there be other things that could be taught in schools that might trigger this definition of divisive concepts?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, again, I want to apologize for not bringing what are many, many examples of these divisive concepts being taught in the classroom across our state. They exist, and they are reported on in our news media almost every day. And I'll just remind my colleague that I didn't press the issue when I asked you for an example either. But to follow up on the question, which was, forgive me, I forgot what the question was. What was the question again, Madam President?
Senator Flexer.
It's okay, I understand. I do have a few more examples to you for the good senator when we go back to the underlying bill after debating this amendment. But if there are no examples, that's fine. I'm just trying to evaluate this. This amendment just came out within, I think, less than the last hour, so I'm evaluating it for the first time. But Madam President, we'll move away from questions of what teachers can teach, but if an individual were to feel discomfort when they learn about the amount of violence against women that is committed in this country, primarily by men, would lines 20 through to 24, where an individual might feel discomfort knowing that those kinds of acts are committed by people of their own sex, would that trigger something, Madam President?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for reminding me that was your question, was asking if anything else would be covered under here. And I will, again, repeat no. And the answer to your most recent question is also no. These items that are listed 1 through 9 are very specific, and nothing other than what is included on the paper before us would apply. And I believe these concepts are very clear, that we should not be teaching that children, to children, that one race or sex is inherently superior to another, and so on. And that's the simplicity of this amendment, Madam President. If you believe that we should not be teaching divisive concepts like that, you support this amendment. If you are fine with people being taught that one child is inherently superior to another because of their race or sex, and so on, then I suppose you don't support the amendment. But I brought this amendment here in an effort to try and work across the aisle in a bipartisan way to make sure that we are working together to stop discrimination and racism, even in our government, as the underlying bill does, but also in our system of education, be where it is most concerning, because we're dealing with children who have minds that are malleable, and they're getting their first taste of politics and how the world works. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Flexer.
Through you, Madam President. Again, I want to fully understand what we're being asked to consider here. And at the end of the amendment, it talks about race and sex scapegoating, or race or sex scapegoating. And I just want to understand, would this law, if it were to pass, be triggered if someone in school was talking about how in this country, at the founding of this country, from the 1600s until 1865, white people enslaved black people? Or would this be triggered if a teacher were teaching a high school civics class about the Violence Against Women Act and was talking about how most acts of violence against women were committed by men? Would these sections be triggered? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. No.
Senator Flexer.
Through you, Madam President, I don't see how it couldn't be, Madam President. Madam President,
I could explain.
Senator Sampson.
well, yeah, Madam President, I'll just continue. Madam President, can I ask the good senator, is this amendment before us modeled after existing law elsewhere, or a law that exists at a different level?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. This language is very similar to what recently became law in the state of Rhode Island, not exactly the reddest state in the country. I did omit one line from that, but it was only because I couldn't make sense out of what it meant. And if I could find the language, I'd bring it to you. Race or sex scapegoating, by the way, is when you are applying to a child that you are teaching fault, blame, or bias based on their race or sex by the actions of others. So the examples that the gentle lady provided have nothing to do with that. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Madam President. And I appreciate that answer with regard to scapegoating, but I'll again go back to lines 22 or 24. If a student were to feel discomfort, guilt, or anguish with regard to the examples in the classroom I gave concerning the Violence Against Women Act or slavery in this country, would that be triggered?
Senator Sampson.
The whole point of the section is to prevent students from, as individuals, feeling discomfort, guilt, anguish, or other form of psychological distress based on their individual race or sex. Again, this has to do with protecting our students from being treated differently based on their race or sex. And I can't make it any simpler. This is a policy that I think everyone should agree with, that we are trying to end racism and discrimination through this language. Through you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I just don't know how we can legislate the feelings of a student. And while a student is learning in our classrooms about a wide variety of things that they learn in our K through 12 systems, they may have a wide variety of feelings. But writing legislation to banish teaching certain things at the risk that certain feelings may come forward for a student based on their race or sex, I just don't know how this would work in real practice, and that's what I've been trying to get to today, Madam President. Madam President, I would argue that sometimes a feeling of discomfort, guilt, or anguish might actually make a student want to learn more, might make a student want to engage in policies to change what they're learning about, to make sure other people know the history that they're learning about, to make sure people like us who are elected to represent them here in this circle do something about it. Discomfort could be a real motivator for a student, Madam President, and that's just one section of this amendment that I have grave concerns with, Madam President, and I appreciate that that the good senator is offering this in an attempt to find some bipartisan compromise on the underlying bill, but I believe that this amendment is in fact a divisive concept, and I would urge my colleagues to reject the amendment. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Flexer. Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize getting up for a second time. I just want to make a couple of comments that I sympathize with my colleague, and I will tell the chamber that I have great difficulty with trying to regulate what is taught in our school system also. I don't do it lightly. I'm a firm believer in local control. I want to see our communities and our boards of education and the people that elect those boards of education members make the decision about what the curriculum is in their communities. But, Madam President, we have a huge problem in this country. We have institutions of higher learning, certainly, but it's filtering into our K through 12 system that are teaching concepts just like the things mentioned in this bill. And this amendment is extremely straightforward. I tried very, very hard to make sure that we were not going to cross a line into a place where we are prohibiting teachers from teaching the truth and history of the past. I want them to be able to. I want them to be able to talk about the Founding Fathers truthfully and completely, including their history of owning slaves, which I would not put as the primary focus that we should put on them, but definitely something that should be acknowledged and treated as part of history because it is true and relevant. I would never write a policy that says that we can do that. I would never write a policy saying that we could not teach about the dangers of white supremacy. I believe we can. Nothing in this amendment prohibits that. Nothing. All this amendment gets to is prohibiting teachers from teaching children that based on their race or sex as individuals, that they are less of a person or more of a person, based on themselves, that race or sex, or anything else that has happened outside of them, the actions of other people or history. I believe that is a universal concept we should all agree with, Madam President. Read through these I encourage everyone, read through them and ask yourself, 1 through 9, whether or not you think it's good for our students to learn these things. Should students be taught that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex? The question is simple. If you think that they should, certainly vote against my amendment. But if you think that's wrong and we should stop it right here at the source where we can, then vote for my amendment, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Will you remark further on the amendment before the chamber? Senator Lesser.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to ask a few questions of the proponent of the amendment.
Senator Sampson, prepare yourself. Please proceed, sir. Senator Lesser.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, this amendment seeks to shield Connecticut students from divisive concepts and protect them from discomfort, guilt, anguish, or psychological distress. I note that one part of it, one element, discusses meritocracy and whether we are a meritocratic society or one where races have advantages, and I can read the exact language. Through you, Madam President, would this amendment prohibit the teaching of divisive concepts like the American Civil Rights Movement or the Civil War?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll start by just disagreeing with the gentleman's description of the bill. This bill is not designed to shield anyone from anything. That doesn't do that. It prohibits the teaching of concepts. It does not shield anyone from anything. And as was discussed earlier, it is perfectly fine if students are actually exposed to discomfort sometimes because it helps in their learning process. And the answer to the gentleman's question is a simple, again, no, because nothing in this bill has anything to do with preventing the teaching of any actual truth or history. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Lesser.
I appreciate the gentleman's answer. I would just say that it's hard for me to square his answer with what I understand to be the plain text of the bill, which seeks to shield students from being taught parts of American history, parts of American society that they may feel anguish about or that the bill describes as, quote, divisive. And I think that the purpose of education is, in fact, to challenge students and to talk about our country and our history and to engage in sometimes challenging material. And as a result, I will be opposing the amendment. Thank you.
Will you remark further on the amendment? Will you remark further on the amendment? Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I just have one last question to the proponent of the amendment. Did this language, this bill, was it proposed in the Education Committee?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. No, this language is new to the chamber, but as everyone in the circle knows, particularly folks in the majority, we create new language daily and present it to other members without it going through public hearing. And that is the purpose, as a matter of fact, through Mr. President, that is the purpose of the amendment process.
Thank you, Senator Sampson. Senator Flexer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I did just want to clarify, I do also have the pleasure of serving on the Education Committee, and I don't remember seeing any concept like this raised in that committee. And I know that we do come here and debate things with different language, but I don't remember seeing anything even like this as a concept being raised in that committee this year, and so I would question that process. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Flexer. Will you remark further on the amendment? Will you remark further on the amendment? A roll call vote, I believe, has been requested. Mr. Clerk, if we could proceed to a roll call vote on the amendment.
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. This is Senate Amendment B of Senate Bill 1073. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate on Senate Bill 1073, Senate Amendment B. Senate Amendment B. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate.
Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Please check to see that your vote is properly cast. Mr. Clerk? The machine will be locked. Clerk will take a tally. Hit again? Okay.
Senate Bill 1073. This is Senate Amendment B. Total number voting 35. Total voting yea 12. Total voting nay 23. Absent not voting 1.
The amendment fails. Mr. Clerk. Yes. Back on the bill. Is there additional comment on the bill, which is Senate Bill 1073, as amended by Senate Amendment Schedule A? Will you remark? Will you remark further? Senator Sampson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I believe I still have the floor. And I just want to follow up and say that I'm very, very disappointed that we could not come together on the previous amendment. I worked very, very hard to draft it in a way that I thought would be hard to vote against, honestly, not because I want to put anyone on the spot, but simply because I believe that the concepts contained in that amendment are something that we should all agree with. It strikes me that we could not come together for something as simple as prohibiting those types of divisive concepts being taught in our classrooms. As I mentioned, I'm going to support the underlying bill, but I do want to do it with a caution to the folks that are charged with taking out the responsibility, or carrying out the responsibility, rather, of doing this study and coming up with these examining and identifying the best methods and so forth. I do believe they should be concentrating on the present and finding places where racism and discrimination still exist in our system of laws and justice, like the example that I mentioned about long lines at the polls. That's something we can fix, and that's something we should fix. But if we are more interested in trying to right wrongs of the past by creating more systems and rules and quotas for how we are going to treat people in the future, I believe that only will allow the problem of racial and gender division to exist in our country into the future. And that's something I don't want to see, Mr. President. I want us to get past that, and I want it to not be used in the political realm ever again. There are plenty of other issues that Republicans and Democrats can agree or disagree on. We do not have to go down this road any further. I implore my colleagues to put that aside, because it's really unnecessary, and it's just the ugliest form of politics. I'll support the bill today, Mr. President, and I hope that the folks that are carrying out this operation take all of my comments today to heart. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Sampson. Will you remark further on the bill as amended? Remark further on the bill as amended. If not, Mr. Clerk, if you would announce a roll call on Senate Bill 1073 as amended by Senate Amendment Schedule A.
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. Schedule A. Total number voting 35. Total number voting yea 35. Total voting nay 0. Absent not voting 1.
The bill is passed. Mr. Majority Leader.